Right now, you're reading this sentence, and somewhere in your head, you're arguing with it a little. Maybe you don't buy the premise yet. That instant back and forth arguing with a stranger's idea thing your brain just did, that's not normal. Not in the animal kingdom sense of normal. And depending on how you count it, this specific trick, running someone else's thoughts inside your own head, might be the single weirdest thing biology has ever produced. So here's the actual question. With millions of species on this planet, and a good chunk of them clever in their own right, why is it just us? Why not the crows? Why not the octopuses who can open jars and hold grudges? Honestly, and this is the part that should bother you, for a while, we weren't even the smartest hominine in the room. There was another species walking around with a bigger brain than yours. Bigger! And they're gone. And we're the ones writing the history. Okay, so quick thing before we get into it. If you're into the why is the world like this rabbit hole, there's a sub button somewhere on this screen. No pressure. But let's go back to the actual beginning, because it's messier than you'd think. About 7 million years ago, give or take, there's a single ape somewhere in Africa that we don't have a name for, and every human and every chimpanzee alive today is arguing about, descended from it. At that split, nobody's smart yet. Chimps today are sharp. They use tools, they scheme, they remember faces for years. Point is, the intelligence gap didn't open at the split. It opened after, slowly, over millions of years, in one branch and not the other. Fast forward to around 3 million years ago, at a site called Lemekwi in Kenya. Someone, not even Homo yet, probably an early relative, is smashing rocks together and making sharp edges on purpose. Not an accident. Repeatable, deliberate flaking. That's the oldest known stone tool industry on Earth, and it predates our own genus by hundreds of thousands of years. Which means tool use came before human. That's backwards from how a lot of people assume this story goes. Then brains start growing. Genus Homo shows up around 2.5 million years ago, and skull volume creeps up generation after generation. But here's the thing nobody puts on the thumbnail. Bigger brains are expensive, metabolically brutal. A modern human brain burns roughly a fifth of your daily calories while just sitting there doing nothing dramatic. In a world where calories are never guaranteed, evolving a bigger, hungrier brain is a bad bet, unless it pays for itself. And it did. Somewhere around 1 million years ago, when someone figured out how to keep a fire going. Anthropologist Richard Wrangham has this idea, cooking hypothesis it's called, that controlled fire let us pre-digest food outside our own bodies. Cooked meat and starch give you way more usable energy per bite than raw. Suddenly, the gut doesn't need to work as hard, and the calories that used to go to digestion get rerouted somewhere else. Guess where? Now, imagine you're standing at that fire. You're not thinking about evolution. You're just cold and hungry. And this thing keeps the dark back and makes the meat taste different, better, and somehow your stomach doesn't hurt after. You have no idea you're mid-species upgrade. Nobody ever does. Which brings us to the part that gets weird. Because around 300,000 years ago, a species shows up in Europe and Western Asia that's got a brain bigger than ours. Not a little bigger. On average, larger cranial capacity than modern Homo sapiens. Neanderthals. They buried their dead. Some evidence suggests they made jewelry. They hunted animals twice their size with sharpened wood and sinew. And they're extinct. And we're not. And brain size clearly isn't the whole answer, because if it were, you'd be reading this in Neanderthal.
So what actually happened? What's the difference? Here's where a researcher named Michael Tomasello comes in. He studies the difference between individual smarts and what he calls cumulative culture. The idea, roughly, it's not that any one human is dramatically smarter than a chimp or a crow or a Neanderthal. It's that humans are freakishly good at one specific thing, passing a discovery to someone else. Exactly. So the next person doesn't have to reinvent it. A chimp can crack a nut with a rock. Its kid might learn that too, by watching. But the trick basically stops there, generation after generation. stuck at the same level. Humans don't stop. One person figures out a slightly better spear point. The next generation doesn't just copy it, they improve it. That's the ratchet. Once a discovery is made, it locks in place and can't easily slide backward.
Stay with me, because this is the actual hinge of the whole story. More than fire, more than brain size. At a place called Blombos Cave in South Africa, there are pieces of ochre, a kind of pigment, deliberately engraved with cross-hatched patterns, dated to around 73,000 years ago. Not tools, not food. Marks made for the sake of making marks, meaning something to somebody, passed along in a way that other people could read. That's symbolic thought showing up in the archaeological record. And once that switch flips, it doesn't flip back. And once you've got symbols, you've got the ratchet running at full speed. Language locks discoveries into a format that survives the death of the person who made them. Which, yeah, I know that sounds almost too tidy, like I'm building to something. But stick with it, because the payoff's actually kind of dark. A single Neanderthal band might have numbered in the dozens, maybe low hundreds at most. Isolated, thin social networks. Homo sapiens networks stretched farther, traded farther, mixed ideas from strangers more often. More minds in contact means more chances for a lucky improvement to survive and spread. It's less about individual genius and a lot more about how many people you're plugged into.
Meanwhile, actually, wait, let's back up on the crows and octopuses for a second, because that comparison matters more than it sounds like it should. Crows solve puzzles that would stump a lot of adult humans on a bad day. Octopuses learn by observation, escape sealed tanks, seem to recognize individual people. But neither species builds anything on what the last generation figured out. Every crow, every octopus is basically starting over. No ratchet, no cumulative anything. They're smart in isolation and stuck in aggregate. Forever. Which I'd have called that a design flaw if I were pitching intelligence to a committee. So the picture that's forming isn't humans got smart. It's that one lineage of ape stumbled into a feedback loop. Bigger brains, freed up calories from cooking, denser social groups, symbolic communication, cumulative culture, and each piece fed the next one, faster and faster, until a species that started out cracking rocks in Kea ended up putting a telescope in orbit. Every other clever animal on the planet is still doing roughly what its ancestors did 10,000 years ago. We are, catastrophically, not.
So here's the full picture. An ape splits off 7 million years ago, no smarter than its cousins. Somebody starts napping stone on purpose 3 million years back. Brains balloon, fire pays the calorie bill, a bigger-brained cousin species rises and falls anyway, because raw brain power was never the whole trick. Then, sometime around 70,000 years ago, give or take, marks on ochre in a cave in South Africa signaled that symbols and the ratchet they run on had arrived. And once that ratchet started turning, it never really stopped. And that thing you did at the very start of this video, arguing silently with a sentence, agreeing, disagreeing, updating your own opinion in real time off a stranger's idea, that's the ratchet, still running, right now, in you. Every crow and every octopus on Earth is exactly as smart as it's ever going to get. You are not. That might be the strangest inheritance any species has ever gotten. The ability to never quite finish becoming what you are.
If any of that cleared your understanding on why, there's more of this kind of thing on the channel.